Hello, and welcome to today's video, where we'll be delving into the life and work of one of the most influential figures in the history of science, Charles Darwin. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Darwin's name and his association with the theory of evolution, but there's so much more to this remarkable man than just that. Over the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to explore Darwin's journey from a young naturalist to the father of evolutionary biology, and how his ideas continue to shape our understanding of the world around us. Born on the 12th of February 1809 in Shrewsbury, England, Charles Robert Darwin came from a family of freethinkers and intellectuals. His grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, was a renowned physician and natural philosopher who had already proposed ideas about evolution in his work Zoonomia. This family background would prove crucial in shaping young Charles's interests and his eventual career path. But it wasn't all smooth sailing from the start. In fact, Darwin's early academic career was rather unremarkable. He began studying medicine at the University of Edinburgh, but found the lectures dull and the sight of surgery distressing. It was during this time, however, that he began to develop his skills in natural history, learning taxidermy and becoming involved with the Plinian Society, a student natural history group. I've tried lately to read Shakespeare and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. Now, we come to what I consider the most pivotal moment in Darwin's life, his voyage on HMS Beagle. In 1831, at the age of 22, Darwin was offered a position as a naturalist on a 5-year survey expedition around South America. This wasn't just any old boat trip. It was a journey that would fundamentally alter the course of his life and, indeed, the course of scientific history. The Beagle set sail on the 27th of December 1831, and over the next 5 years Darwin would encounter a wealth of geological features and wildlife that would challenge his understanding of the natural world. One of the most significant stops on this voyage was the Galapagos Islands. Here, Darwin observed subtle variations between species on different islands, particularly among the finches. These observations would later play a crucial role in the development of his theory of evolution by natural selection. But it wasn't just the wildlife that caught Darwin's attention. He was also fascinated by the geological features he encountered, such as the marine fossils he found high in the Andes Mountains. These discoveries led him to ponder the age of the Earth and the processes that had shaped it over time. Seeing this gradation and diversity of structure in one small, intimately related group of birds, one might really fancy that from an original paucity of birds in this archipelago, one species had been taken and modified for different ends. It's worth noting that Darwin wasn't the only one thinking about evolution at this time. Ideas about the transmutation of species were already circulating in scientific circles. However, what set Darwin apart was his meticulous approach to gathering evidence and his ability to synthesize diverse observations into a cohesive theory. Throughout the voyage, he filled notebooks with detailed observations and speculations, laying the groundwork for the ideas that would eventually revolutionize biology. The Beagle returned to England in October 1836, and Darwin, now a respected naturalist, began the long process of analysing his findings and developing his theory. Now, you might think that after such a groundbreaking voyage, Darwin would have rushed to publish his ideas, but that's not what happened at all. In fact, it would be more than 20 years before On the Origin of Species was published. Why the delay, you might ask? Well, there were several factors at play. Firstly, Darwin was aware of the controversial nature of his ideas. The notion that species could change over time, and that humans might share a common ancestor with other animals, was deeply at odds with the prevailing religious and scientific beliefs of the time. He knew that publishing such ideas would likely provoke intense criticism and potentially damage his scientific reputation. Secondly, Darwin was a perfectionist. He wanted to ensure that his theory was as robust as possible before presenting it to the world. This led him to spend years conducting experiments and gathering additional evidence to support his ideas. He bred pigeons, studied barnacles, and corresponded with naturalists around the world, all in an effort to strengthen his case. This meticulous approach was characteristic of Darwin's scientific method, and it's one of the reasons his work has stood the test of time. I'm almost convinced, quite contrary to opinion I started with, that species are not, it is like confessing a murder, immutable. But perhaps the most significant factor in Darwin's delay was the arrival of a letter from Alfred Russel Wallace in 1858. Wallace, a naturalist working in the Malay archipelago, had independently come up with a theory of evolution by natural selection that was remarkably similar to Darwin's. This spurred Darwin into action, leading to the joint presentation of their ideas to the Linnean Society in July 1858. It's a fascinating example of simultaneous discovery in science, and it highlights the fact that the time was ripe for these ideas to emerge. Darwin, realizing that he could no longer afford to delay, quickly wrote an abstract of his theory, which became On the Origin of Species, published in November 1859. Now let's take a moment to consider the core ideas of Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. At its heart, it's a beautifully simple concept. Darwin observed that within any population of organisms there is variation. Some individuals have traits that make them better suited to their environment than others. These individuals are more likely to survive and reproduce, passing on their advantageous traits to their offspring. Over time, this process leads to changes in the population, with beneficial traits becoming more common and less useful traits disappearing. This is what Darwin called descent with modification. What's truly remarkable about Darwin's theory is its explanatory power. It provides a mechanism for how life on Earth has diversified over millions of years, from simple single-celled organisms to the complex ecosystems we see today. It explains the patterns we observe in the fossil record, the geographical distribution of species, and the similarities and differences between organisms. In essence, it provides a unifying framework for all of biology. Of course, Darwin didn't have all the answers. He was unaware of the mechanism of heredity, which would later be explained by Mendelian genetics. But the basic principles of his theory have stood the test of time, being reinforced and refined by subsequent discoveries in genetics, paleontology, and other fields. I'm quite conscious that my speculations run quite beyond the bounds of true science. It's important to note that Darwin's ideas were not immediately accepted by the scientific community or the public. In fact, they were highly controversial and sparked intense debate. The idea that humans were not specially created, but had evolved from earlier primates was particularly contentious. Darwin himself was reluctant to discuss human evolution in On the Origin of Species, only hinting at it with the line, "Light will be thrown on the origin of man and his history." It wasn't until 1871, with the publication of The Descent of Man, that Darwin fully addressed human evolution. Despite the controversy, Darwin's ideas gradually gained acceptance among scientists, and by the time of his death in 1882, evolution by natural selection was widely accepted as the best explanation for the diversity of life on Earth. The impact of Darwin's work extends far beyond the field of biology. His ideas have influenced disciplines as diverse as psychology, anthropology, and even economics. The concept of natural selection has been applied to understanding human behaviour, the development of cultures, and the evolution of ideas. In many ways, Darwin's theory of evolution represents a fundamental shift in how we understand our place in the natural world. It challenges us to see ourselves not as the pinnacle of creation, but as one branch on the vast tree of life, connected to all other living things through our evolutionary history. Of course, Darwin's ideas have also been misused and misinterpreted over the years. The concept of survival of the fittest, a phrase coined by Herbert Spencer, not Darwin, has been used to justify social and economic inequalities, leading to the problematic ideology of social Darwinism. It's crucial to understand that Darwin's theory describes how nature works, not how human societies should be organised. Darwin himself was strongly opposed to slavery and believed in the fundamental equality of all human races. In fact, his belief in human equality was one of the motivating factors behind his scientific work. If the misery of our poor be caused not by the laws of nature but by our institutions, great is our sin. Today, more than a century and a half after the publication of On the Origin of Species, Darwin's ideas continue to be refined and expanded upon. The modern synthesis of evolutionary theory, which combines Darwin's ideas with genetics and population biology, forms the foundation of contemporary biological research. From understanding the emergence of antibiotic-resistant bacteria to tracking the evolution of viruses like SARS-CoV-2, evolutionary theory is an essential tool in modern science and medicine. As we face global challenges like climate change and biodiversity loss, Darwin's insights into the interconnectedness of all life on Earth are more relevant than ever. His work reminds us of our place in the natural world and our responsibility to protect and preserve the incredible diversity of life that surrounds us. As we come to the end of our journey through Darwin's life and work, it's worth reflecting on the profound impact this one man has had on our understanding of the world. From a young naturalist with a passion for beetle collecting to the father of evolutionary biology, Darwin's story is one of curiosity, perseverance, and intellectual courage. His willingness to follow the evidence wherever it led, even when it contradicted the prevailing beliefs of his time, is a model for scientific inquiry that remains relevant today. Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection is often described as one of the most important ideas in the history of science, alongside Newton's laws of motion and Einstein's theory of relativity. But unlike these physical theories, which describe the workings of the universe, Darwin's ideas touch on something much more personal, our own origins and our relationship to the natural world. Perhaps this is why they continue to provoke debate and discussion, even among those who accept their scientific validity. As we face the challenges of the 21st century, from climate change to pandemics, the insights provided by evolutionary theory are more crucial than ever. Darwin's legacy is not just a scientific theory, but a way of understanding our place in the vast interconnected web of life on Earth. There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one, and that, whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful have been, and are being, evolved. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Charles Darwin's life and work. I hope you found it as fascinating as I have. If you've enjoyed this video, please do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Your support really does make a difference and helps me to continue creating content like this. And do let me know in the comments if there are any other scientific figures or topics you'd like to see covered in future videos. Until next time, keep curious and keep questioning.